right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful day here, evening, or whenever you're watching this. My name is Swizz. Welcome to another wonderful educational material of mental health at Level Up Mental Health. My name is Swizz. I think I already said already. Losing it. It's all good. We got some solid topics here that we'll be going through. This video right here in particular, we're going to be discussing strengths and kind of understanding what they are, kind of the importance, and especially of what we feel may be preventing us to identify them. Okay, so before we kind of dive in, think about when you think about yourself and you think about just kind of who you are as a person or what things you kind of constitute as yourself, right? Think of how quickly or what is the immediate thought you might have, right? Is that thought either in a negative or positive light, right? When you instantly just kind of think to yourself immediately, what's kind of the first thought that comes to your mind? And that's something that as we're trying to build and improve upon, it may be hard to identify what your strengths are, right? Because especially if there's been trauma or there's been abuse or whatever it is that you've experienced in your past, neglect prevents the ability to really just kind of practice a skill and recognize if when we have strengths, right? Now, obviously, I think it's important to emphasize that this may not be a case for everyone here, right? And I think what's important to understand is that in general aspect of being able to do this is just kind of recognize ourselves and know that there are good qualities with us, right? Especially if we're looking at depression that can really kind of hamper our ability to identify and spot these things. Um, this is where the skill comes into play, being able to really just kind of practice and really just help us hone in on our good qualities and kind of block out kind of the noise there that may be trying to kind of bring us down, right? So let's take a look at being able to spot the strengths here, and let's pull up the worksheet, and here we are. So here we're at strengths identifications. So as we kind of said, the goal here is to be able to increase our ability to identify our strengths. So what are some signs to help kind of recognize that? When we're being able to kind of know that we have our strengths, certain things like being able to draw on to certain things that allow the use for a strength, desiring the use of strength, prioritizing tasks, desire to learn information related to strength, sense of energy and engagement, and having success when using this strength. Essentially, just overall increased well being, right? Allows us to not survive but thrive in the environment that we're in, right? And that's the ultimate goal, is to continue to learn and grow and improve, and being able to kind of know the strengths there leads us to get to that point there, right? So one of the things that's important too, that I'm sure a lot of us may be good at, is identifying strengths in others. And if we're able to do this, we can develop kind of a better personal relationships, recognize our own strengths based on kind of looking at others, and be able to identify what kind of constitutes a strength, right? Now, obviously, what's important to understand is what someone's strength outside of your own may be different than your own, right? So everyone has kind of their own strengths, and being able to just kind of recognize them is key, right? Some may bleed in, others may be different, but what's important to understand is walking away and knowing that you can identify what are the good things and what are the positive things about yourself here. So what is the purpose to spot strengths in ourselves? I think a lot of that is kind of self-explanatory, but obviously through it, we develop a hopeful perspective. We gravitate towards people that encourage our strengths, and we gravitate towards activities that utilize our strengths that in both make us feel good, right? Obviously, when you're around kind of those positive and supportive people, you feel more encouraged to use those, right? To use the skills or abilities that you may have, that's leading you to gravitate towards it, right? So being able to kind of recognize when you are around those people is key, especially for when you want to thrive in that environment, right? So, just kind of related to the differences between discussing weaknesses and discussing strengths. What we're trying to do here is really just kind of turn these particular words into transform it into more of these kind of strengths that we want to utilize. So, if we're feeling kind of hesitant, dejected, disengaged, when it gets to the point of getting energized, happy, relaxed, confident, passionate, optimistic, self-critical, being able to kind of use that elaborate language, annoy at feelings, absorbed in the subject, retrospective, forward focus. So again, being able to kind of help us recognize when we are discussing strengths and we're discussing weaknesses, how they may come across. And when we are using those strengths, these are the actions that we kind of resemble with, right? So we want to get to the point where we can get to this aspect here, which can be hard. Again, especially if we had a kind of a video and a topic about defeating depressive thoughts, and this kind of relates with that, and it can be very hard, especially when you're looking at depression. That can really just kind of bring down and really just kind of create a fog in your mind of what we're trying to identify, what we're trying to utilize to build our strengths here, right? So, one of the exercises I like doing in regards to strength spotting is this three good people activity. So, if you haven't done this before, I definitely encourage you if you feel you have a hard time spotting the strengths. And the spoiler here is that it's kind of a good lead into being able to identify your strengths here, right? So the worksheet starts with being able to identify a fictional character, which especially, if we're heavily involved in, the entertainment, media, whatever, we might be able to kind of quickly point something out. Oh, boom, I like Superman because he gives me hope and he gives me that just kind of support and just, is there for those people, right? Can just kind of roll off your tongue in that sense, right? The next one is definitely a thinker here, where you're trying to find an inspiring person that you know, and it's getting from fictional to more kind of that non-fiction. I mean, it can be there can be a fiction person that is inspiring, but especially if you feel that there's someone in particular that really just kind of helps again make the impact of this worksheet here. And the last part is being able to describe yourself, right? Now, every time I've kind of gone through this worksheet with a few clients, this has always been the hardest part, is you're able to knock out the first two. But then when it comes to yourself, it gets very hard to be able to identify those strengths, right? And that's where you have that chance to ask the question, well, why? Why is it hard for me to list my strengths? But I can do it with a fictional character, I can do it with an inspiring person. What makes those people different from me that I can't do it, right? And that's the question to kind of ask yourself here as you're trying to improve and develop your strengths here, right? Because again, the more you're able to kind of question the way that your brain is thinking, the more you may be able to find those answers that's preventing the success that you're looking for, right? Question, question, question. Because again, what your mind is telling you may not always be the truth, right? And as we've kind of said before and throughout multiple of the videos, I'm a huge kind of component into kind of behavioral influences, right? So, meaning that growing up, whatever, I have, it's not kind of set in stone with everything, but I do believe in that tabula rasa where, you're born with that blank slate. And yes, like obviously genetics plays a huge role involved with that as well too. But really kind of your environment shapes kind of that particular person, especially how you think about things, right? Because as a child, you're kind of grown into this world and you really have kind of, no experience obviously with anything. So the guardians and leaders and parents or whoever it is begin to teach you kind of the rules of life with everything. And obviously that can be misconstrued based on kind of how the environment is. And then that's your initial thought. And that's what you tend to believe. And especially at an early age, if that gets continued to be conditioned, it's going to be more and more kind of really hardwired into you, right? So if the kind of the feelings of I can never be good enough or I'm a failure, if that has really been started at a young age, and you're looking at kind of your strengths there, it's going to feel foreign. It's going to feel like an alien sort of thought because it's not what you're programmed to believe. And that's where the really rewiring begins, to recognize what you were led to believe in the beginning may not necessarily be what the reality is. And it can be hard, but it just takes time and practice. And the more kind of exposure you have with the self to do these activities, the better you'll be at being able to kind of take away from it. So this is a nice list here about being able to identify particular strengths. And as you can see here, again, if you feel you can't find one, always kind of resorting to a list is a great way to recognize if there's anything that you may relate to, right? So take a sec here, kind of look at the list here. You can pause or whatever. But really just know that there is a lot out there, and it's key to really just to identify at least one if you feel you have a hard time doing so. So that is all I got here about strengths. So hopefully you enjoyed the video there. Like I said, it's as I said before, it can be very hard. Excuse me. It can be very hard to do to spot the strengths, right? But the more practice that we have, the easier it will come be. And that's all it is. If you feel you're looking at it and it just, again, you're denying that other kind of alternative thought, that's kind of the chance to ask yourself, well, what's the reason I'm denying that thought, right? What is leading me to say that I can't believe this? And the more you question it, the better you'll be at kind of understanding yourself and understanding the past and its influence on your current behaviors. Okay? All right. So thank you so much. We're going to check out, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe. Got a whole range of other content. If you're watching the stream, we'll be back here in a bit. So thank you.